And the recording is in progress, folks. May these words live forever. No, I really do appreciate hearing uh, from you and from just all of you, you know, how I came to practice. And this often comes up, in an interview, especially the first interview. Um, and I think it's, for me, it's just important information, to know, uh, you know, where everyone is, in their practice, just as information. But it's inspiring to me that, here we have right now, what do we have? 15 people, 14 people. And somehow we all started to practice Buddhism. What are the odds in this culture? Well, they're getting better all the time, I suppose. So, that's a good thing. Does anyone have a question?
I have a question. Um, while we were traveling over Christmas, we were on interstate, and for some reason, this trip there seemed to be more traffic accidents than usual. Usually, you have one or two, but I think there were four altogether, and some of them looked a little hairier than others. A little bit more than just a fender bender kind of thing. And so I've learned not to be impatient as we're traveling and slowing down and everybody's at a crawl, because you kind of assume that maybe there's something that's happened, and it's not you who's in the wreck. At least you can be, patient. But when we drive by, my thought is, I hope everybody's okay. But then it's also, I'm glad that's not me. And then it occurred to me that that's kind of well, I don't know, it just didn't seem very generous or very, you know, um, that my thoughts were to myself, in my situation. And and then I thought, well, you can be grateful for what you have, and for your situation, while also recognizing somebody else's situation is not as good. That those two don't have to be in opposition. So, any thoughts you would have on that, I would appreciate.
Well, I think you said everything. I can only repeat what you just said. I think you're absolutely right. It's not something that I've thought about a lot myself. I mean, it is a common experience, especially on the highways, more and more all the time, it seems. And our practice is first great vow, helping all beings. And so compassion for all beings, um, no matter what the situation is. Sometimes you might feel a person is truly deserving of whatever fate has befallen him. Uh, I don't know quite how to put it, but we should always, of course, give strangers, the benefit of the doubt. There's usually no need at all to be judgmental. Uh, Certainly not judgmental um, with other people listening to what you have to say, but even to yourself, to be judgmental. And it certainly is to take things that you see as cautionary. We have to be perhaps more careful ourselves all the time, not to cause harm to ourselves and to others. Simply a matter of really paying attention all the time. It's hard to do that on a long distance trip. It takes, these days, a lot of concentration. I remember driving back through part of Utah and all of Colorado on a recent trip, and lots of hills, lots of curves, cars going very fast, passing at 85 miles an hour. So, what is this? What am I doing? How can you have the stamina to do what is necessary? As you age, that stamina is less and less, I've found. Um, it's not that patience necessarily wears thin, although there is that as well. It's just that it's harder to put up with difficulties. Zen practice entails its own difficulties, as I'm sure you all know and are experiencing even on this short retreat. The best reaction that we can have to any of this on our part, or when we see others who have suffered because of simply bad fortune or perhaps even lack of attention on their part, is simple compassion without any judgment. I myself, in my lifetime, have done, I don't know how many things that I regret. What you would have to call really bad behavior, by any standard. I was treated by the people involved on almost every occasion with a lot of compassion that, in some sense, I really didn't deserve, in a very real sense, that I didn't deserve. So we need to have gratitude uh, in situations like that and try to emulate, that sort of behavior. So all of us make mistakes, um, some more than others, and it's a matter of realizing our common humanity. So, even people who have practiced Zen for a long time um, are subject to misbehavior. Our teacher had to do a repentance ceremony. I've myself done a repentance ceremony, and I won't go into the details of either occasion. Some of you are familiar with the details. Being aware of your own um, vulnerability, your own falling far short of perfection, I think really does help in your interaction with other people. As I look at all of you on the screen, and to the extent that I'm familiar with you, uh, all I see is a lot of virtue. And I think that's the best way to view people, is to be aware of their virtuous qualities. And as far as possible, I wouldn't even put myself in the position of saying forgiving people for their less than desirable qualities. Uh, but realizing our common humanity is important, and not having the illusion or the delusion, that practicing Zen meditation makes you exempt from bad behavior. I think it certainly does help. Um, but moment to moment, we all have to, be aware of the current situation, the relationship that we're in with other people as individuals and as a group, and try with a certain amount of conscious effort, and not to assume that if we just let things alone and keep sliding by, everything will be okay. I don't know if that was a response to your question precisely, but your question led to those thoughts. So Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. It might have kind of it related to that. Um, so, you're talking about bad behavior, so, your own bad behavior and how that affects other people. It how can one respond to someone else whose sort of continuous lifelong bad behavior has caused you pain?
Mhm.
And how do you how can you sort of bring that sense of humanity to like a continuous kind of painful experience?
Yes, I have not been in that position myself of having a relationship with anyone who has behaved that way, bad behavior, hurting other people over, excuse me, the course of a lifetime. I've heard of such instances, and they can become a real problem for an entire family. You're usually not in such a situation all by yourself. Uh, so, one possibility is to have real conversations with other people, perhaps in your family or your circle, who have experienced what you have experienced. And it may be that no one has an answer. Um, there are some situations that indeed remain intractable, forever, and we have to accept that. But sharing experiences, not in a spirit of complaining about the other person's bad behavior or hurtful behavior, but simply in a spirit of I know what you're going through, I'm going through it also, and asking, is there anything I can do to help make you feel better, maybe to help you understand? And maybe there is, and maybe there isn't, but making the offer, establishes really a bond of compassion amongst the, well, shall we say, survivors, that remain. And perhaps in that process, it's possible to find, some degree of forgiveness for the offender and whenever that person has done. Keeping it completely to yourself might be the hardest thing to do. That might be the most appropriate thing to do as well. It's possible to take difficult situations like that into your practice in the same way that you might work on a kongan. So some kongans that you take up, in fact, most of them at first seem absolutely impossible. There's no way I'll resolve this. But if you keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, if you keep trying, and if one metaphor that Sosan uses, if this problem is like a jewel in the palm of your hand or a pearl, many, many facets, and you turn it this way and you turn it that way. We have a habit when we face a difficult person or situation to just stare straight at it, with a single minded spirit of aggression, perhaps even. But turning to look at this facet, turning to look at that facet with a sense of openness and wonder, which is perhaps hard to summon up when you've been really hurt. Um, but it can lead uh, to an opening. It's also a good way to work on a kongan, incidentally, a pearl in your hand. And you turn it this way, you turn it that way. Usually, when faced with a kongan, you see it in a kind of one dimensional way, and that's all you can see. And it's very difficult to break through. But if you look at it this way, look at it that way as a habit of mind, uh, you can see things that you thought you may never have seen. So I wandered away from your question, which seems to be based on a difficult experience. But that's what I have to offer. Thank you. Are there any other questions? This is turning into a grim session so far.
I have a question. Um, it's about the conscious effort. It's Kat, by the way, you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and
there you go. I'm just
hi,
hearing your voice and not seeing you. Hi.
sorry.
Yeah.
And it's I'm gonna attempt to ask this question, but it's kind of discombobulated, so bear with me. In his Dharma talk, Charlie mentioned how thinking about things is like not the right thing to do. Like think overthinking something is
Uh-huh.
wrong and we should just do whatever we're going to do. Like we should just practice, we should just eat or whatever we're doing.
Uh-huh.
But how can you both put in a conscious effort to try to make things better and to help other people while also not thinking about trying to help other things? Like I was thinking about this road trip my mom and I were taking, and I saw this like livestock slaughterhouse. And I started to cry in the car because I couldn't help but think about how I wanted to get all the pigs and the cows and everybody out. And that was my first instinct. Like I didn't think about what I wanted to do. I wanted to get them out. That was the first thing I thought of doing.
Uh-huh.
And or wanted to do. I didn't think about it. It was instant, but I couldn't do that. So how is it possible to like not think about what you should do to help do while also still helping, but like avoid feeling helpless?
That's a good question. And a very good example. If you're driving past a slaughterhouse, there's probably nothing you can do about that particular circumstance. Of course, in your life, yes, you can become a vegetarian, a vegan, and perhaps participate in movements to foster, that awareness. And that has actually had some small effect on at least the consumption of animals in our culture. You might say not so you notice, but some indeed. So take it into your own life. Become responsible yourself for the humane treatment of animals. Um, we have a chant that we do for animals, and it's often presented as a chant on that we do on the death of an animal, and it's chanting Namo Amitabha, and we chant it to the same tune as Kwanzaa Moso. So Amitabha is the infinite light, infinite space, Bodhisattva or Buddha. Um, and the chant goes, and Namu means homage to or become one with. So in this chant, you're becoming one with this Buddha among whose functions are, care for animals, especially those who have died. So it goes Namu Amitabha, 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 Namu Amitabha. Then you are doing something. So is this changing anything except maybe making you feel better because you are at least chanting for the welfare of these beings? And I can only give you my subjective experience and offer no proof. But the experience seems to be based on the realization that everything in this universe is deeply interconnected, intimately interconnected, and that your chanting, Namu Amitabha, goes out into infinite time and space and does make a difference. Uh, Not an immediate difference, perhaps, in the slaughterhouse that you're passing, but you have the feeling, I think, that you have to do something. And I think that's a good feeling to have, that you have to do something. And this is something that you can actually do. Then your mind is, intimately involved with the, at least the ultimate welfare, of all animals. So I think that is worth doing. Um, at the very least, and this may sound trivial, you tend to feel better about yourself when you do it that way. That at least you did something, and at least there's some message to the universe, that you care. And I think those messages are ultimately heard and have an effect. And in a sense, that's what all of our practice is based on, especially when we're doing group practice, such as we're doing now. And I talked earlier about the temple of Zoom that we're in, and our hybrid practice and our online practice, our Zoom practice, really gives us an opportunity on the screen to see everybody else face to face. I've said more than once, maybe not all of you have heard it, so I'll say it again. Well, when I practice, and this was before Zoom, I practice chanting, sometimes Namu Amitabha or Kwanzaa Bosal, or other chants to the same tune, and coordinating it with my breath so that one breath for every repetition, eightfold repetition, of the mantra, and chanting Kwanzaa Bosal. And first I look at this person on the screen, and then this person on the screen, and then this person on the screen, and this person on the screen. And depending on how many people are on the screen, I will chant anywhere from 1 to 5 times for each person. And it usually evens out pretty well at the end because I've had a lot of practice doing it. Then I feel that I am establishing a close connection with everybody who's practicing here. I think simply the fact that we're practicing, there's a deep connection. But for me, it feels like, okay, there's a one-to-one, connection in a serial, sort of way. And I used to do it even when, we were live. It's just, it's harder to look around the whole room, because some people are sitting there. But, I would do that. And it's just my way of, connecting with everyone, chanting for everyone. And I guess to sum this up, chant. Chant for all beings, chant for animals specifically and in general and universally. That at least establishes our direction of fulfilling the first great vow. Sentient beings are numberless. All those animals in the slaughterhouse are among those numberless beings. We vow to save them all. And we may not know how we're going to accomplish that, but it is our vow. And I think it's your vow in spirit. So thank you, Kat. Let's see, we have time for one more. Tom?
Hey, Stan, so is there such a thing as high class kongans and low class kongans and is it, well, I guess just that. Are some more worthwhile than others? And, if so, how do you tell the difference?
Well, we have 365 Kongans here. Some of them are definitely harder than others. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're more worthwhile than others. A lot of times it's a matter of individual fit. So a teacher will sometimes, being familiar with the student, choose a certain Kongan that, resonates in some way, with that particular student. But that's not often the case. So our regular Kongan practice, choose one Kongan, and perhaps two, and everybody gets asked that, no matter how experienced or inexperienced they are. And then, there's the homework. I think everybody has the experience that some Kongans are much harder than others. And there's certainly it's kind of a conformity there. That is, this, most students, have difficulties with certain Kongans, and every teacher knows that. Some students, there are some Kongans that any student, just about any student, will work on for months, without getting very far. Um, from some of your faces, I see the message, make that years, and that's, that's true too. But for other people, it does not present, such an obstacle. And that's one reason we have so many Kongans, is so that uh, no matter how good you are, you will come up against Kongans that just stop you cold. And, that's the idea, is to stop you cold. Like, oh, that experience. Um, Again, it's a matter, to a certain extent, of individuality. Um, but I can tell you that the 10th gate, the mouse eats cat food, but the bowl is broken. Everybody has a hard time with that. For instance, never known anybody to get that in less than several years, you or maybe many, many months anyway. Well, but some you'll just, oh, of course. So it's like, it's multifaceted, Kongan practice. Uh, many different Kongans. They can be grouped, into types, and there have been. Um, but even within a certain typical group, there'll be a variety. Some might be hard and some might be easy, even though it's the same sort of Kongan. So, it's a complicated situation. These Kongans originate mostly in Tang Dynasty, China. Some of them, you could say, are a little earlier than that, and some you could say go back to Buddha. Buddha holds up a flower. Mahakashyapa smiles. It's like he was sort of creating a Kongan there, but being actually used as a Kongan. This is something that's been developing for 1400 years now, and it's still developing, actually. Um, it's an ongoing process. I think it's one of the great jewels, I think, of our practice, is Kongan work, and I know it can be exceedingly frustrating, but if you keep working on it, it bears fruit, even if you never answer the Kongan. So try for 10,000 years, and then ask me about it. Okay? All right. So thank you all. Thank you all very much for your practice. We're going to continue with interviews